congressional hearing type of format that you saw. We saw Skilling at the congressional hearing several times. We saw Fastow there.
Yeah, he was in the background, rolling his eyes. I remember him.
Okay, so, well, first of all, you got the format. You got a very hostile congressional panel, right? Asking pointed questions at a critical time, several critical stages for the company. You've got key executives standing there giving their testimony under oath, because every time you go before a congressional committee, you are sworn in. So conceivably, they're telling the truth. They're sworn to tell the truth. And in fact, we did see at least one of those individuals adopt or take the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, so they wouldn't get into any trouble. So we see this as a critical stage of the process. What's your view? What did you think about this?
I'm quite cynical, but I actually thought there was a very strong performative aspect to the whole thing. Like, we talked early in the movie, they talked about how Ken Lay had this close relationship with the Bush family, yes, and that he was almost, there was speculation he was going to be Secretary of Energy for the Bush administration. Yes. So seeing that, it was very hard for me, even though it was a congressional hearing, it wasn't Bush there himself. There was a feeling like they were complicit early on, and now that the brand is no longer the most admired brand, now is the time they turn around and start yelling at Skilling and Fastow.
So when you say they, you mean Congress. You're referring to, yes,
Congress
was complicit early on, but they,
it's hard for me
they
to
got
think,
religion after the end. At the end there.
It's hard for me to think that there's no doubt in my mind that Enron contributed to a number of their political campaigns.
Very active politically.
Because of their close relationship with the government. So it's very hard for me to think that they didn't benefit themselves from what Enron was doing. So to turn around, and I feel the same way about the bank hearings that are going on right now. There's a lot of press about Elizabeth Warren, how she took those bankers to task.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that they didn't contribute to a lot of congressional campaigns. There's probably some money spent on her campaign as well against Scott Brown.
A lot of money spent against her too.
That's true, but I feel like, yes, a lot of them, contribute to both sides.
Sure, hedge your bets. That's the way the industries work. Any other reactions to the congressional hearings or congressional?
I just felt that at least if I was going in front of a congressional hearing, I would make sure that I had everything together, and it really didn't seem that way. It was kind of just like, I don't know, this isn't my fault, like, stop questioning me. And that's just really not the way I would go about things. And if that was how I felt, or I just didn't feel like answering the questions, I would definitely make sure my attorney stepped up some more. So I guess I was just a little surprised in that sense.
Skilling did not do himself any favors by appearing as out of the loop as he tried to convey in the hearings.
Well, not only that, his smugness and sarcasm during the hearing was, I thought, completely inappropriate for the whole situation. Because I mean, it just shows that they really didn't think they were doing anything wrong, and I don't think he still understands what he did wrong even after that hearing.
That's the only way I can rationalize it in my brain. Like when I was watching all of the cavalier attitudes and egregious behaviors, and it was like they're heading towards a brick wall at 100 miles an hour, and it didn't occur to anybody that they were going to take the fall. And the fact that he didn't seem to realize that he was culpable is the only way I can make sense of it in my head. Because how?
Well, what about hubris? I mean, what about hubris and just, we're too big, we're too good to fail. We've got the smartest guys in the room. We got the smartest guys in the room working for us. We have a product that is no one understands, but everybody wants to be a part of it. We have profits that continue to go up and up and up and up, and we politically our backside's covered because we got the Bush boys, the Bush family, squared away. So I'm not so sure if I buy the fact, I buy your argument or your thought, your position that they didn't quite know. I mean, I think that that Skilling himself adopted a position that said, you know what, you're just a bunch of small congressmen. You know, we can buy and sell you, we contribute to your campaigns, you know, we max out on each one of you. You know what, if we decided next time around that we didn't want you here, we probably could throw enough money against you so you wouldn't be around. So I think that was part of it. And that came through, you said smugness, in his smugness. And the way that he almost dismissed some of those members of Congress, very dismissive. And, you know, so to Tracy's point, so you have Congress deciding to finally go hard on Enron after all of the, maybe all the warning signs, all of the things are beginning to unwind and unravel a little bit. So you've got them focusing on what went wrong, still trying to understand a little bit, because they've got their theories. And but it is an appropriate role for Congress to jump in at that point in time. And it's not, I think you put your finger on it, it's not unlike Congress, United States Congress, to wait for the events to catch up, as opposed to jumping on and doing some preliminary investigation, some anticipatory kind of investigation, some action, taking some action before the fact. So they let the markets work, they let the story unwind, they let a few people fall, and then they decide, okay, well, we're going to get in on the interest, and on the side of the American people. So so let's put yourself in that position. And by the way, from my own experience, both from the Hill staff side and from being on the outside, well, let me back up. If you're on the congressional side, it's really kind of sport. It's kind of fun to see these captains of industry or high-level military folks, to see them squirm a little bit, because you have ultimate power right then and there. You got captive, you got subpoena power, you have media focused in on them, you've got the moment, the drama of the moment, cameras very tight. You know, I don't know if you saw it, but usually the dais there, the congressional dais is there, and you've got rows and rows of camera people sitting down looking at the witness who's just a couple of feet away. Very intimidating process. So from that side, they feel very comfortable. When you're on the other side of the camera, on the other side of the dais, which is what's most appropriate in this context, you have to really be on and perform, but you also have to be mindful of what it is you're communicating, how you're communicating. Skilling did not do well. There are some others who have not done as well. I guess the question I have for you is, as a corporate communications expert, professional, what is it that you think is important to be conveyed when you're in that forum? It can be your worst nightmare. It is the big leagues. It's not, and the consequences are monumental. You're under oath. The markets, the capital markets, are watching your performance. The media is going to take the highlights of your performance, whatever you said or didn't say, and that's going to be the soundbite for the press. So they're all going to be there, and investors are watching, because they're going to decide one way or the other with their dollars. So the question to you is, what are the 2 or 3 or 4 key performance items or issues or points that you would want to implement while you're in that forum? Kelly, go ahead.
Thinking of 2, which is, I think humility is important,
Okay.
but so is confidence in what you say.
Yes.
So you may not be saying what people want to hear, but if you have a position to uphold, and you sound like you mean it, but the whole smug thing does not apply.
Yes.
So I think that's where we want to be.
Others? Brendan, go. Amir, Brendan, and Amir.
I'm thinking consistency, consistency in your manner. Stay, like having an even keel sort of goes along with what Kelly's saying, but I think also keeping your facts straight. I mean, I think that's one of the key places where people start to pick up that maybe you're not telling the whole story or you're leaving stuff out because if your facts aren't straight, then there's a lot they could question. And Congress, you know, you see congressmen and women, they'll dig at that, like you were saying. So I think staying on message.
Amir?
I agree with both points, and just like how you say sorry to someone else, like if you come off as genuine, even if you don't really mean it, but you know you have to do it, you just come off in a certain way and emphasize it, like, you know, show some empathy, and like, you know, it's exactly what you said, don't be smug about it, but just really being genuine about it, even if you're not really.
I got a question, because we're talking about these points are all geared to the idea of them, how they're presenting themselves in the court case, right?
In the congressional hearing. Yes.
So we're saying that these points, that would change their fate, as in they wouldn't have been convicted. Like, what's the point of them not being smug, or, you know, because if you're already going downhill, they have enough evidence on you. Is being polite or being humble, that's going to get you free?
Make a difference. Well, that's a fair point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think it would probably still be more important for Skilling to sort of maintain that tough guy, smug image going into prison than to be sort of apologetic at the very end and serve the same sentence anyway. Because I think the sort of the gravitas that he has in his personality rests on that so much that losing that is like losing everything. You lost your money, you lost your image.
Now you're not even man up.
Right.
Man
Exactly.
up, right?
Exactly. Now you don't even have that. Yeah.
Kelly, go
I
ahead.
think that by damaging your credibility by appearing smug now may make things more difficult for him later. If he ever just tries to reform or engage in some sort of, you know, reputation rebuilding or enter into a new sector of business, it's going to haunt him. So I think that having an element of sense of empathy or conceding in some way would probably preserve a little bit of, well, there's no reputation left, but it would make it that much harder for him to even attempt to repair his reputation if he left on a slow note.
Go ahead.
One thing, not really about the congressional hearing, but I guess as far as what kind of led them going downhill, I remember listening a lot in the class, the constituencies, I guess. If they had maybe paid more attention to their employees, it's one thing really what happened or what affected the public and consumers.
Yes.
But I keep hearing a lot of times you focus on your employees, they kind of kept their employees' best interest at heart more so in the beginning, even with all the criminal activity they were participating in. It probably would have had a different fate. It's one thing to say, oh, the public, you messed up with the public, and then, oh, this happened. Well, that's an accident. But you kind of screw over your employees, that's not really an accident. And you screw over the public too.
Yes.
Kind of.
So let's go back to your original question, which was, does their posture make a difference? Would it make a difference? All right. So ultimately, in the court of law, the facts are the facts. The evidence is the evidence, and it's going to be presented in the context of a trial. So that is what it is. Whether he's a nice guy, a humble guy, you know, a real not humble guy, a real arrogant person, in the court of law, that might not have an impact except for on the jury. Okay, so that's something to think about. But in the context of this hearing, this congressional hearing, where image does count for something, and at that point, I think, and we saw a couple of different stages, they had not quite gone, the court case had not been completely established at that point. It may have been, the discovery may have been in process, but there was no decision being made in the court at this point. I'm not even sure if they were tried. They were under investigation, yes. But I don't think the trial had begun because he would not have testified at that. So here we're also, we're dealing with the perception of a CEO communicating to, as you point out, many different publics. He's communicating to regulators, to legislators, who really hold, at that point, still held the company's fate to a certain degree in their hands. Congress still had a key role to play. The regulatory agencies, many questions were asked. Why did not the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, why did it not get involved early on? Why did not the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, why didn't they get involved earlier on in the process when they saw this manipulation? I think for the purposes of our discussion with respect to corporate communication and the effectiveness of a chief executive officer making points in a forum, let's talk about that. Because here you have you've got a guy who is, he's adopted a position, but it ain't working. His tough guy, smug mug, was not working. And he also, I think someone may have mentioned this earlier, if you don't know all the facts, one good method to convey sincerity and credibility is to offer particularly an investigative body, the opportunity to come back with a supplement. So I don't have, Mr. Skilling, how come you didn't have the financials up until the last quarter? How come you didn't know how much money was at stake? I don't know, Mr. Congressman, I don't know, Mr. Senator, Ms. Senator, but I'll get that information back to you. I'll get that back to you. Very important to be complicit, to be compliant, I should say, with the investigative body, and to communicate that kind of sentiment to these people. Yes.
So I can't help but think that, maybe he was just extremely arrogant, but he's probably paying a ton of money for lawyers, and they're saying, look, this is the strategy that you can use. I don't know how much of that plays into it, but I would think there's a strategy there.
There is a strategy for dealing with congressional investigations. I've seen my share of them, helped in developing some of those strategies. Oftentimes, though, the best developed strategy, the best laid plans of mice and men often go asunder. Well, in this case, if you've got a member of Congress asking a direct question to your witness, to your client, who is the CEO, who one believes he's smarter than everybody else, two believe, you got to look at who you have there. He probably listened to his advisors, but maybe felt like he was strong enough, fast enough, smart enough to go it on his own. And that's what we saw. We saw a guy out there saying, I know how to handle this, I can do this. And the more he talked, I think the more it was clear that he probably knew more than he was letting on, and that he wanted to also at the same time show that he had a little bit of, a little plausible enough, a little bit of, it wasn't me. It was, it was those guys. I kind of knew what was going on, but I delegated so much to my lieutenants, and they were smart. They knew. And if there's anything that went wrong, we had a rogue guy here, a rogue traitor, I think, who just went off and wreaked havoc, and that's the cause of all of this problem. So, after the fact. So he's your boss or he's your client. You work for Enron. He just came off the congressional panel. His day is done. All right. The media is writing. The cameras have rolled. Congress has gone away. What do you do now, based on his performance that you saw there? You're his top communications advisor. Kelly made the point earlier that she asked, well, where were the top PR people? They clearly did not know, or from what we saw, they were not terribly involved in this whole process, such that they were even given the opportunity to create a nice story or put some spin on it. So given what we saw, his performance there, what, just in Congress, what would you do? What would be your advice now? He's your client or he's your boss, whichever position you've taken, and you have to now either rehabilitate or repair or somehow explain that performance. Now,
I mean, I just don't like the way he went into it. Like, I would just definitely go in there more apologetic, because you look at all these issues. I think the public appreciates someone who can admit what they did wrong, and then tell them, here's what happened, here's what went wrong, here's what we can do to fix it. Maybe if he proposed some points for the future.
but his performance is done now. It's done. So that the past is past. Now you come in, and it's your job to clean it up.
I mean, the damage is incredibly heavy, but one of the first things I would probably do is explain to the public how much duress he's under and how much stress and anxiety because of this surprising turn of events. And so from sort of like, kind of communicating on his behalf, communicating his surprise and his anxiety that all of these things have happened and he didn't know about them.
Okay, that's credible.
I'm sorry, it was just making me think that we should send him to rehab for exhaustion. For exhaustion, right? Right.
Like when you love your man.
So let's establish some sympathy for him.
Exactly.
Even though he made $250 million last year and lives a wonderful life and seems to be smug and arrogant,
Right.
we're going to be.
The smugness is born of the anxiety.
I see. Okay, it's really a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that a positive case study would probably be how Bill Gates kind of turned his image around. So I think that what our friend needs to do, number one, is to start a charity.
Start a
And
charity.
he needs to put major bank in that charity.
The Enron Foundation.
No, not the Enron Foundation.
Okay.
His name foundation.
Oh, Jeffrey Skilling Foundation.
Jeffrey Skilling Foundation for Wayward Youth or something. And,
Okay.
well, no. He really likes Guys with Spikes. Let's make it a gifted children program. And
Okay.
talk about how he's trying to make the next generation the kind of generation that won't let this happen. That he's trying to atone for his sins by helping.
Implicit in that is that he's admitting that he did something wrong first.
No.
Well, when you say atone, that's what I mean, that's sort
What
of.
I'm trying to say is that he understands that Enron did something wrong.
Ah.
As the head of
Enron did
Enron,
something wrong.
he does bear some guilt for what other people that totally weren't him did.
Right.
So he's starting this charity as a way to atone for his sin, which was, of course, small amount of negligence, just a little bit.
I'd open a business ethics school in his name.
John, you were shaking your head. What do you think?
Because absolutely his name is like a label for him, and the only way is to, in China we have like a label, the way to dedicate yourself to like the charity or something like that, to re-image himself into a person and to distinguish himself from the company and make all the guilt that related to the company and divide himself from that.
So that the company's there, but
And now I'm out of the jail and I'm not a new person. I'm not that way anymore. I learned something from that, and I want to. I'm still rich, and I want to use my wealth to do something good, and to, I'm not that person anymore.
So that's the Michael Milken approach.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Michael Milken, who's a famous, the inventor of junk bonds. That's what he did. He went to jail, and then he came out. He established a very still functioning institute called the Milken Institute, I believe, where they look at big, large macroeconomic issues. They don't make money, although he's still done very well. Yes.
Oh, only thing I was going to add, along with everything they said, was how the employees kind of invested and lost their retirement funds and all of that. I think you should do something
Okay.
to kind of fix that.
So this is the second time you've mentioned employees. Yeah, that's good, thank you. So employees really got the short end of all
Yeah,
this.
but they did all the forms and all the stand in the camera and watch them lie and say, oh, I keep investing, and then next thing you know, they lost all their money. You publicly did that. So.
What about my man who was the chief financial officer who got out quickly and then went and bought an island or something like that? What was his name? Ping? Yeah. So he like saw, he knew. He saw the writing on the wall. He said, I'm going to take my $250 million and leave. He did.
Whatever.
Smart guy.
Did he get in trouble at all?
I don't think so.
He
I
paid something.
He may have paid.
He may have paid after the case.
He didn't go to jail though.
He ended up in jail.
In jail. So he could
Smart
afford it. He got out early. Okay, so that's one approach. What about in terms of communicating? Ariel, what do you think?
I wouldn't have taken this job. I mean, I think defending this type of behavior just contributes to perpetuating it.
What if before this all happened, you went to Enron or Enron came to the campus and interviewed, and at that point they were at the height of their reputation. They were still one of the top companies to work for, most admired. They gave you a wonderful package to come in and be in the communications department, start, and you worked your way up. And then as you were there, this saga, this series of events began to unfold. So yes, you didn't join the company while it was, going down the tubes, but when you started, it was a good company. It was full of promise. All the outward indications were that it was sky's the limit. Nowhere to go but up. So you're there now, and you're an employee, and you're asked to help your CEO communicate not only what happened, but what comes next. What comes next?
Well, why would any of their employees stick with them then? They just, literally flush them down the toilet. I would be looking for a new job for myself.
Okay. Lots of them did.
Well, aren't they bankrupt? Isn't Enron done?
At this stage, when he was doing the congressional testimony, they may have been bankrupt, but the presentation was that they were still a relatively healthy company. They'd taken a couple of hits, but it's still a relatively healthy company. We still got some in reserve. We still have and not only that, and we are innovating. We're developing new things. Not only are we, yes, okay, we're in our core business, but we're developing new streams of business, new revenue. Right? So the employees, unfortunately, did not get the full brunt of what was happening until the very, very end, when it was too late. Remember when he's standing up in front of the company gathering, sort of like a town hall gathering, and his wife is there? I think it was his wife, or maybe one of the other board members, maybe not his wife. No, I think it was his wife, Ken Lay, I'm talking about now. And the question was, well, what do you do? And she says, buy more stock. Buy more Enron stock. Even though she knew, they were dumping stock. Okay, so very dastardly, sinister folks there. Anyway, I just think, as I said, it's a wonderful case study of how a huge company that has many different stakeholders, legislators, the public. It was not so much a B2C company. So while consumers were affected, they were not really the customers. They were just really they were just part of the financial economic process. But regulators, the analysts, the investing community was so tied into this company, we're enamored by it. So I guess the question, what I wanted you to really take away is that here's this big company that has now, we find itself gone through a series of events and then a crisis. And we peeked in on it during the crisis period. So that's sort of the intro that I have to today's discussion on crisis management and crisis communications. So with that, I'll ask you to stop for now, and